Section 1. In this section you will hear a conversation between Rachel and Caesar. They are discussing a field trip for the following week. First, you will have some time to read questions 1 to 10. Now we shall begin. You should answer questions as you listen because you will not hear the recording a second time. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 7.
Hi, Caesar. How are you?
Good, thanks, Rachel. I'm fine. I was going to ring you tonight, so it's a good thing I've run into you. I wanted to remind you about the field trip, the 2-day field trip next week.
What field trip?
The geography field trip to the Warragamba Dam and the water treatment plant. It's a compulsory part of the first year environmental science course. Didn't you know about it?
No, I must have missed that piece of information. This is news to me. But give me the details, please.
Sure. Well, we have to meet outside the library next Monday at 7 in the morning, or you can meet us at 7:45 at the bus station in time to catch the coach, which departs at 8 o'clock.
Oh, all right. And how long does it take to get to this place?
Well, once we're on the coach, it will take about 2 hours. No, actually more like 2.5 hours at that time of day. And it could take as long as 3 hours to come back the next day because of the evening traffic.
And what's the purpose of the trip?
Didn't you get the course outline? You don't seem to know anything about this course.
Well, remember, I only started at the university a month ago, so I joined the course 2 weeks late, and I've been trying to catch up ever since.
Oh, of course. Well, we spend the first day visiting the dam. I believe we actually go inside the wall of the dam, which is really quite interesting, to see the dam functioning, you know, how much they regulate the water supply each day, depending on how much water is needed downstream in Sydney.
Oh, okay. And, so if this is a 2-day trip, where are we staying? Not camping by the dam, I hope?
No, not camping. They do actually have some overnight cabins near the dam for visiting groups, but we're spending the night in a youth hostel in a town nearby. That's all been arranged by the university.
And what about meals? Should we take our own food along?
No, you won't need to do that. The hostel provides 2 meals, breakfast and an evening meal, and we can find a cheap place to buy lunch.
Great. So, is this the only dam that supplies water for Sydney?
There are a couple of others too, but this is the main one.
Well, with a population of over 4.5 million people, I suppose we do use thousands of litres each day.
Absolutely. In fact, according to my notes here, they pump the water through something like 20,000 kilometres of pipes and canals and store the water in 262 service reservoirs. And each day we use enough water to fill 600 Olympic swimming pools. Now you will have another chance to look at questions 8 to 10. As the conversation continues, answer questions 8 to 10.
And what's happening on the second day?
Well, we're coming back to town and going to the water treatment plant to see how they purify the water for drinking.
Oh, that should actually be quite interesting. I'll bring my camera.
Yes, that's a good idea, because we're supposed to include original photos for the final piece of work at the end of the course. And make sure you bring a notebook and pen or pencil.
OK, I'll do that.
You'll probably need some good walking shoes and spare clothes too, and I would recommend that you bring a waterproof coat of some sort, because the chances of it raining are pretty good next week. And a hat, perhaps.
Sorry, no. I draw the line at a hat.
Fair enough. And by the way, do you have a mobile phone?
I do, actually.
Well, bring that along, because that way we can keep in touch more easily.
Provided that mobiles work up there, of course.
That's a point.
Do I need a map?
No, I wouldn't bother. We won't need to do any map reading.
OK then. See you on Monday, and thanks very much for letting me know.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to section 2. Section 2. You will hear an extract from a talk about the history of tennis. First, you will have time to look at questions 11 and 12. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 and 12.
Good afternoon and welcome to the programme. Today we have a special programme about the history of tennis in this country, and we also have Steve Mackay in the studio, the all-time great British tennis player, to give us the lowdown on some interesting facts about the sport and other great tennis players. Steve, obviously tennis is one of the most popular sports broadcast on TV today. Can you tell us about the early days of tennis?
Well, the medieval form of tennis is known as real tennis and eventually became lawn tennis, which is what we know today. Real tennis changed over 3 centuries from an earlier ball game played around the 12th century in France. This had some similarities to handball. People would hit a ball with a bare hand and later with a glove. People say this game was played by monks in monasteries. By the 16th century, the glove had become a racket. Real tennis spread in popularity throughout royalty in Europe and was the most popular in the 16th century.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 13 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 13 to 20.
It's amazing how the sport has changed then over time, and how technology has helped to advance it with the state-of-the-art tennis rackets that we have today. So, what about the players who will go down in history as the best at this sport? Who do you think will be remembered on the Wall of Fame?
Well, obviously I have many favourites, and all tennis players have different styles and will be remembered for different aspects of their game. The first player, though, that has to be mentioned is the great Bjorn Borg. He will go down in history due to the fact that he won 11 Grand Slam singles titles between 1974 and 1981, 5 at Wimbledon and 6 at the French Open. Born in 56 in Sweden, Borg became the youngest winner of the Italian Championship just before his 18th birthday, and 2 weeks later, he was the youngest winner of the French Championship. Borg is the only player in the Open era to have won both Wimbledon and the French Open in the same year more than once. Another very important tennis player is Boris Becker. He was born in 1967 in Lyman, West Germany, and he is a 6-time Grand Slam singles champion. Since he retired in 1999 from the professional tour, media work and his personal life have kept him in the headlines. An interesting aspect of his career is the fact that he was the youngest ever male Grand Slam singles champion, winning Wimbledon at 17 years, 7 months. Moving on to our next great player, we have Pete Sampras. He was born on August the 12th, 1971 in Washington, D.C., and during his 15-year career, he won 14 Grand Slam men's singles titles. His flair for the game was evident at age 3 when he discovered a tennis racket in the basement of his home and spent hours hitting balls against the wall. His parents are of Greek origin. He has given some truly unforgettable performances on the court over the years. The final player I will mention is the great Andre Agassi. He was born on April the 29th in 1970 in Las Vegas, Nevada. During his career, he won 4 Australian Open titles, 1 French Open, 1 Wimbledon, and 2 US Open, which gives a total of 8 Grand Slam titles. An interesting aspect of his career was that he turned professional at the age of 16, and his first tournament was in La Quinta, California. He won his first match against John Austin 6-4, 6-2, but then lost his second match to Mats Wilander 6-1, 6-1. By the end of the year, Agassi was ranked world number 91.
These players really have achieved a great amount in their lives, and they will be talked about for years to come, especially when the Wimbledon Championships come round in June. Steve, which one is your ultimate favourite?
Oh, I just can't answer that. They all evoke great memories in the world of tennis, and they have all contributed so much to the game. Their names will always be inscribed on the Wall of Champions.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to section 3. Section 3. You will hear Dr. Richardson discussing the requirements of a course and the writing of an essay with a student. First, you will have some time to look at questions 21 to 30. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 28.
Enter, please.
Good afternoon, Dr. Richardson.
Good afternoon. You're David Simons, is that right?
Yes, I've got an appointment to talk about the course requirements with you.
Fine. Now, why don't you take a seat over there, and I'll just get some details from you. First, can I have your home address and your student number?
That's 15 Market Avenue, Hornsby, and my student number is C97H85.
OK. Now, I see here that you've already completed 18 credit points, but that you haven't done the Screen Studies course, which is normally a prerequisite for this course. Why is that, David?
Oh, the course coordinator gave me an exemption because I've worked for a couple of years in the movie and television business, and they considered my practical experience fulfilled the same requirements.
Fine. Shall we go over the course requirements first, and then you can bring up any queries or problems you might have? It might be most useful to start with a few dates. The final examination will be in the last week of June. That's the week of the 23rd. But the final date hasn't been set. It should be the 25th or the 20th, but you don't have to worry about that yet. Before that, as you can see in your study guide, there are 3 essay assignments and some set exercises. I'll deal with these first. These set exercises are concerned with defining concepts and key terms. They do have fixed answers, not in the wording, but in the content. To that extent, they're quite mechanical and provide an opportunity for you to do very well, as long as your answers are very specific and clear.
Yes, I see there are about 20 terms here. How long should the answers be?
You shouldn't exceed 250 words for each term.
Right, that looks easy enough. And the third assignment seems fairly straightforward too. Just a journalistic type review of a recent development in television. It's not so different from what I've done in my work.
Yes, it should be fairly easy for you, but don't exceed 1,000 words on that one. Essays 1 and 2 are the long ones. The first essay should be about 2,000 words, and the second 2,500 to 3,000, and the approach for both should be analytical. In the first one, your focus should be on TV and the audience, and you should primarily consider the theoretical issues, particularly in relation to trying to understand audience studies. In the second, I'll want you to focus on analysing television programmes.
Should I concentrate on one particular type of programme for that?
Not necessarily, but you must be careful not to overextend yourself here. A comparison between 2 programmes, or even between 2 channels is fine, or a focus on one type of programme such as a particular series works well here.
So if I wanted to look at television news programmes, that would be okay?
Yes, there would be no problem with that. In fact, it's quite a popular choice, and most students handle it very well.
Good, I'll probably do that, because it's the area I want to work in later. Later, during the course, Dr. Richardson gives David some advice and warnings about his essay. You now have another chance to look at questions 29 to 30. Now listen to the second conversation and answer questions 29 to 30.
Come in and sit down, David. You wanted to talk to me about your second essay, is that right?
Yes, Dr. Richardson. I just want your comments on what I'm planning to do. I'm doing the essay on the differences between TV news programmes at different hours of the day.
How many time slots are you planning to consider?
Well, I think I'd look at all of them. That'd be 5 slots. The breakfast news, the mid-morning news and the midday news. That's 3. Then there's the 6 o'clock news, then the 10 o'clock and midnight programmes. So that's 6, not 5.
That's rather a lot. And you'd have a lot of different audiences to consider. Why don't you just do 2, say the mid-morning and then 6 o'clock? That should give you 2 fairly contrasting approaches with 2 main audience compositions.
Oh, just 2 then?
Yes, I think that'd be much better. Now, how many actual programmes do you plan to work with?
I suppose you think analysing a whole week of news programmes would be too many.
Well, that depends on how much of each programme If you concentrate on one particular type of news item, say the sports news or local items, it might be all right.
Yes, I can see that would be a good idea. I won't make a decision now before I collect a sample of programs over a whole week. I'll look at them and see what items appear throughout the week.
Yes, that's a sound approach. Now, we're getting close to the deadline. Can you finish it in time?
Yes, I think so. I've completed the reading and I know what my basic approach is, so it's really just a matter of pulling it all together now.
Fine, David. I'll look forward to reading it.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to section 4.
Section 4. You will hear part of a lecture about healthy eating. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
I'd like to introduce our speaker today, who has come all the way from Manchester. Dr. Paul Harold, the head of research in nutrition at Manchester University. He is going to talk to us about ways we can improve our lifestyle and fitness. This will include watching what we eat and being more careful about our calorie intake, as well as taking regular exercise. This is an important current issue, as many people eat too much junk food, and the nation as a whole is fatter than it was 100 years ago.
Thank you, James, for your introduction. You are absolutely right. Statistics show that the nation is heavier than it used to be, and this is due to the long hours that we work and the lack of time we have to prepare healthy meals that are low in fat and sugar. There are some simple steps everyone can take to help improve their general health. Maybe lose some weight first. In the long run, it could lower your cholesterol and blood pressure. The first thing to do in order to check that your weight is healthy is to work out your body mass index, or BMI. This is a tool that can help you find out if you are a healthy weight for your height. Obviously, the height of a person will affect what weight they should be. To work out your BMI, you should take your weight in kilograms and divide it by your height in meters. Then you divide the result by your height in meters again. The result you come up with can be checked on a chart to see if your BMI is too high, too low, or about right. Even if your BMI is about where it should be, it is still important to eat a healthy and well-balanced diet. A healthy diet involves consuming appropriate amounts of all the food groups, including an adequate amount of water. Nutrients can be obtained from many different foods, so there are a wide variety of healthy diets. To start with, it is important to eat starchy foods such as bread, cereals, potatoes, rice and pasta, together with fruit and vegetables, and this should provide the bulk of most meals. Some people wrongly think that starchy foods are fattening. In fact, they contain about half the calories than the same weight of fat. Also, starchy foods often contain a lot of fibre. When you eat starchy foods, you get a feeling of fullness, which helps to control appetite. It is also important to eat at least 5 portions, and ideally 7 to 9 portions, of a variety of fruit or vegetables each day. If you eat a lot of fruit and vegetables, then your chance of developing heart disease, a stroke, or bowel cancer are reduced. You also need a certain amount of protein to keep healthy. However, most people eat more protein than is necessary. You should choose poultry such as chicken or lean meat. There is evidence that eating oily fish helps to protect against heart disease. It is probably the omega-3 fatty acids in the fish oil that help to reduce build-up in the arteries. Aim to eat at least 2 portions of fish per week, one of which should be oily. Obviously, what we eat is highly important, but it is also crucial to do regular exercise, as it strengthens our heart, tones our muscles, and is also good for the mind. We're increasingly living in a world where physical activity has stopped being a day-to-day part of our lives. We have domestic appliances to wash and dry for us, and cars to get us around, and with the decline in manual labour, many of us spend our working days sitting at desks. Adults should do a minimum of 30 minutes moderate-intensity physical activity 5 days a week. You don't have to do the whole 30 minutes in one go. Your half hour could be made up of 3 10-minute bursts of activity spread through the day if you prefer. The activity can be a lifestyle activity, such as walking to the shops, or taking the dog out, or structured exercise, or sport, or a combination of these. But it does need to be of at least moderate intensity. For bone health, activities that produce high physical stresses on the bones are necessary. Well, I hope you've learned some interesting facts from this talk, and that it will help you to change your lifestyles for the better. Thank you for your attention. And I believe that James has some handouts to give you on this subject. James. That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.